Hello and welcome back to the JND Job Not Done podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Hogan, and today we're going to be talking about something I think is super important and is very prevalent in the lives of young men, especially myself and my peers around me. And I'm sure you've already seen in the video title, Life Isn't Fair, so Become the Advantage. It's a simple fact I'm here to tell you that life hasn't been fair, it isn't fair right now, and quite frankly, it never will be. However, there are some things that you can do in order to overcome the unfairness, right? So, whether that be making a different change in your life or creating a routine, but we're going to get into some more specific things about what you actually can do because I think there are a lot of different things that you can do, right? And for a lot of people, it's about money, right? Money, having more time while making money passively, whatever it may be, right? That's what people are focused on. No matter how much you complain, nothing will ever be fair, right? You'll always find something to complain about. We do it in our heads all the time, every day. Um, without notice, even we're like, "Oh, that sucks. Oh, that's fucking stupid. Why do we got to do that?" Right? Why do we have to abide by these rules, right? So I'm going to be here today giving you a couple simple things that will help you out. There's no order. It's not like a cookie cutter plan because that's a bunch of BS. There's no such thing as a cookie cutter plan to make you successful. I think that's full of shit because in anything in life, you're going to have to come up with your own stuff. You're going to have to be unique. You're going to have to go through it, get it done, grind it out, and get through it, right? The die method. So discover, implement, execute. It's trademarked. No one can take it. Anyways, one thing that I came up with when brainstorming for this topic was how what's one simple and one easy way that is very foundational for your success basically or your advantage, right? Your advantage could be anything, really. It doesn't matter. But what I'm here to tell you is that write down a daily goal, write down a monthly goal, write down a yearly goal. And it doesn't have to be those specific three things. You could be a weekly goal, a bi-weekly goal, a semi-annually goal. Like it doesn't matter what it is, right? But the problem is that people my age aren't doing this. They're not writing things down. And people was like, "Oh, I can remember it in my head." Sure, you can remember it in your head, but then you start to slack off. You start to do all these things that don't push you towards being an advantage, and rather you become a disadvantage in your life, right? And so that's what we want to avoid, right? That's what we want to remove from the equation, right? So, for example, your daily goal, it could be, and this can be super simple, guys. You don't really need to, you know, solve, all the world's problems. You don't need to cure cancer. You don't need to do anything like that. It can be really simple, right? Daily goal. I'm going to drink 20 to 30 ounces of water in the morning before I drink coffee or anything else. That's actually what I do. It's really good. And I did notice a difference after I started doing it for a week. So I do recommend that, by the way. And especially as someone who doesn't drink energy drinks and just does pure black coffee, it's great. You can have that feeling of stimulation without being dehydrated. And especially if you're athletes, that's super important because your body dehydrates through sleep as it is resupplying on, vitamins and nutrients that you ate throughout the day and refueling and rehealing your body, right? And for like a monthly goal, you could think a little bit more broad. This could go with exercise, this could go with school, with grades. Um, like a common one that people have is running or walking a certain distance every month, or when you track your steps, right? It could be, you know, get what would be a good measure here? Like you get like 80,000 steps. I don't know. That's probably bad, especially if you're active. But like it doesn't matter what it is, right? It's a fundamental change in your life that you're making that is really that is making you become the advantage, right? Because what you're doing is you're pushing outside your norm, right? First, that's what you need to do. You need to push outside your norm and fix yourself, right? Then you can start to focus on pushing outside the world's norm, or like what it means to be ordinary versus extraordinary, if that makes sense. And then for like a yearly goal, these things are like more like broad spectrum, right? And it could be, you know, your yearly goal is executing your daily goal, your monthly goal, your weekly goal, your semi-annually goal, your semi-weekly goal, whatever it may be, right? So these are things like, okay, this year I'm going to run a half marathon. I'm going to run it could just be a marathon. I'm going to run an ultra marathon. Those are super hard, but whatever, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? But write these down. The most important thing is that you write these down, because if you don't write them down, shit ain't gonna happen, right? You're gonna think about it and you're not gonna have a plan on how to execute. Because what happens is you write down these goals, right? You write down like your ambitions, but then you need to put into practice, right? I even mentioned this last episode, right? You can't just listen to like an audiobook on learning how to play a sport or learning how to play an instrument, right? You can. It's great and it's insightful and it may give you an edge when you start to do that thing, but you actually have to do that thing in order to get better at it. And that's how you create the advantage. You get the prior knowledge, like the prerequisite stuff, right? And then you grind. You grind it out and you get it going, right? You don't stop executing. That's important. And another important part on execution is that you do it every freaking day. Because if you're not doing it every day, now some days I get it. I get it, man. Like you're gonna be in it, you're gonna feel like shit. Some days you're gonna feel like shit. Some days you're gonna feel like you're on top of the world, right? It's life for you. It's as simple as that, right? But the thing we need to understand is that if we are executing the little things and the big things, and it's not going to be the big things every day. It's not going to be your yearly goals. You may have a couple yearly goals, right? And let's say one yearly goal is something you really want to achieve, but today it's not executable. But what else can I do that is able to be executed? What else is able to be accomplished today that is going to lead me to one of my other goals, right? So if you focus on just executing every day, right, you're going to gain so much progress towards your goals. And even if you don't complete that that penultimate or your ultimate goal, right, you're still making progress. You're still getting better at something, whatever it is, right? So you don't really need to worry about it too much as long as you are executing every single day of the week, right? And I know stuff happens, right? I know we get into slumps, but find something super small, whether it's, you know, making your bed, right? It starts as something simple as that, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? Another thing to consider is once you have this, you know, like a routine from your goals, right? And we're going to talk about routines in the next episode. But once you have a routine, you need you need to stay affirmative with your routine, right? You can't just be like, "Oh, I'm going to do it some days I'm not." No, it's a routine. You do it every day, right? Regardless of what happens, right? And no matter what it is, life, sports, the workplace, life is about making adjustments, right? If you're someone who can make adjustments, we talked about this last time, right? And it's a little bit, more separated from it, but it's like, we talked about how to be resilient in the midst of chaos. Well, that's making an adjustment given the environment you're in, right? When you have that routine, you've established almost like baseline from where you can start, right? And then you can build. Because if you try to just go, here's a great analogy. If you try to build a building, right? And you try to just kind of mush shit together, right? And you don't build a strong foundation. I'm sure all the civil engineers are going to love this. You don't build a strong concrete foundation, right? You're not going to, the building's not going to stand, or steel, whatever it may be. Okay. So you need to build your foundations and then you build off the foundations, right? It's the same thing with how relationships work, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys You might be struggling with relationships and maybe you're thinking about getting into a relationship and you're not really sure how to build and foster that relationship, right? And you're like, oh, well, it's not fair. I just don't have any game, or you know, I don't know how to be social with a significant other, or whatever it may be, really, right? Build a foundation, start small, go to your parents, right? Go to your parents and say, hey, or go to your best friend and if they have a relationship or they're in a relationship, right? Right? Go to your friends, go to your trusted family members and be like, hey, like this is like what do I do here? How do I build this foundation? I'm sure they'll give you good advice, right? So make sure you're building and affirming that foundation, and we'll kind of build on that, no pun intended, next time, right? For episode 3. So a couple more things we have here before we end today's podcast is that one thing that I want you to know that comes with all of this: failure, right? And I'm going to make failure kind of like my main focus for every episode, right? Because it's intertwined like in every single thing through the course of your life. And I think you can kind of see that because like some days you're just streaking, right? You're having lots of days in a row consecutively of shitty ass days, right? But it's important that when I said that you have to execute, you're pushing through, and then when you look back on it, you're like, wow, like I was very resilient. Right? I call back to the first episode, but I was very resilient, and now I'm feeling good right now. I started a relationship with this girl I really liked, or I just made this team that I've always wanted to make. It's those things in life that we look forward to, those moments that overcome the negative, right? That overcome the fairness, right? And then we are the advantage now. We have the advantage, right? We basically have created our own home field advantage, even if we are the away team. So to kind of recap what we talked about today, we talked about setting goals for yourself. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter when it is. Honestly, it could be every hour goals, like drink a certain amount of water. I kind of, did a different goal with that in the beginning, but hey, if you want to drink more water, set a reminder on your phone. We live in a really great world with great technology that can help us out and make our lives way easier. So set a timer, whatever it may be for you to help you achieve your goals throughout the day. And then the second thing we discussed today was how do I achieve my goals, right? And we talked about the idea of executing and executing even when the odds are against you, even when you're feeling like shit, even when you don't want to do stuff, but you got to do it anyways. Like no one was ever constantly motivated, right? No one ever has constant motivation 24/7, 365 days a year, right? And that's where discipline comes in. That'll be for a separate episode. We'll talk about discipline and why I think people my age, especially young men, need to learn that trait and skill. And then the last thing that we discussed was foundation, right? How can I make, how can I develop a strong foundation and then I can build up from there, right? That's where our focus needs to be. At the end of the day, that is what it comes down to with anything in life. You have to build a foundation when you're playing sports, right? Okay, let's focus on these mechanics, and then we can get into the more advanced skill, right? You don't do the advanced skill first, right? Like, sure, you want to practice that a couple times, but you also want to make sure that you have foundational, you have the fundamental basis before you want to make sure you have the fundamental basis before understanding the harder skills or the harder things or the more complicated parts of the structure or whatever it may be. So I hope you found this podcast episode very informative and hope that you guys will become the advantage that you want in your life. I'm Jackson Hogan. This is the J&D podcast. And remember, approach life not with a 1 day mentality, but a day one mentality. I'll see you next time. Peace.